Hello, everyone. Welcome back. This is Chandler in Palo Alto.
Hello out there. This is Arne in Oslo.
Are you back in Oslo, Arne? I know you were traveling somewhere.
Yes, I've just been out doing a presentation for a group of people at an incubator in Moss, Norway. Also did a little bit of direct marketing for our podcast. So who knows if there are new listeners out there, and if so, we welcome you.
Oh, yes. Thanks to the new listeners who are joining us for the first time. We are on season 2 of Valley Nordic. The podcast is about mainly conversations between a Silicon Valley entrepreneur, that's me, and a Nordic venture capitalist, that's Arne, on how we look at all startup related things differently. One is investor perspective, another is founder perspective.
And also Silicon Valley versus Nordic to some extent.
Yeah. Okay, so let's get started. So today we thought about discussing go-to-market strategy, or how do startups go to market with their product. So it's a very complex subject. It sounds pretty easy, but when you start thinking about it, because of the diversity of what the product is, it may be software, it may be hardware, it may be hardware plus software, it may be a B2C product, it may be B2B, it may be B2B2C, it may be marketplace, depends on the stage of the company. So it's highly complex. Well, let's start with, I don't think there's a general consensus on what does it mean to be go-to-market. It used to be that, the marketing team did all that, the go-to-market, or sales sometimes, but nowadays, especially in bigger companies, post-Series A, I would say, there's a product marketing function which generally reports to product or sometimes reports to marketing. They do this product or go-to-market. So let's start with what it is. So what does go-to-market mean to you, Arne?
Yeah, so to me, I looked up the definitions in preparation for this podcast today. And clearly, as you say, the definitions vary quite a lot. But the way that I think about it, and the way that most venture capitalists think about it, go-to-market is sort of the processes to get your product in the hands of customers in a successful way. And a lot about it is finding fast and efficient ways of achieving that. So typically, the go-to-market itself involves processes from marketing through sales to customer success. Those are sort of like the core processes that are touched by like the go-to-market activities themselves, and therefore that's also what you have to plan for.
So for people who are not used to the new world vocabulary, what used to be called customer support is now called customer success.
Yeah, although I would view it as somewhat more proactive, in that customer support in traditional way is you wait for the customers to fail and then they call you and you try to fix their problem. Customer success is more about good onboarding and making sure they're successful from the start, and hopefully getting the maximum benefit. And the benefit to the company supplying that product is, of course, that the customers are happier and more likely to stay customers.
Yeah, you like your boxes, Arne. So the customer success people are doing customer support. So now it has evolved to them being more proactive, but companies don't have a separate organization called customer support that is different than customer success. It's one thing.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. So I see it as, again, it's very different. For example, for a hardware product, getting the supply chain ready, inventory ready, that's part of going to market. But in the software world, that doesn't exist. So to me, at a fundamental level, it is you have figured out, who your customers are, and you have figured out what, the version of product that they want. So then now, how do you get, one, if it's a new product, reach those customers even without the product? How do you get them educated, create awareness, get them interested, you know, get getting through the entire cycle of going through awareness to purchase, and then of course customer success? How do you do that after you have done your testing and you feel that you are ready? What are the different channels you use? And then you measure, of course, the CAC, or that's customer acquisition cost, which channels are more effective, basically different ways to reach to the customer with the information, education, and product, and the feedback loop that is the customer success. How does that sound?
Sure.
Yeah. So now, because of the complexity of the subject, I think today we should limit ourselves to B2B SaaS go to market, which is, I think you like that space, Arne. B2B SaaS, yeah? And a lot of your investments are B2B SaaS.
Yeah, so I like the space. It's also a boxy space. So given my boxy space with virtual boxes, so it has a quite well established way of doing things in go-to-market terms as well.
Yeah. So today we'll stay there within that box, Arne's box. So within the B2B SaaS space, let's say, we are, there is a new startup that has done testing and now they're ready to go to market. How do you know, like, is there a checklist you've seen, Arne? How do you know that you're ready to go to market?
Well, I think you only know that you're ready to go to market by having, having tested the product with some customers, which is more sort of the validation and test loops and the proof of pilot products and this sort of thing, which is now past us. That's the one thing. So you should have product market fit before you. Well, there are some various views on that as well, whether you should have product market fit or go to market, or if you should parallel process go to market fit. But the traditional way of thinking about it is you have validated product market fit. So you have customers who like your product and who are staying with your product in some shape or form, in some volume. And then you try to ramp up a go to market plan and process that can replicate getting customers in large volume. But the fundamentals have to be that there's a product that customers like.
Yeah. Or at least you have identified one segment of the customers or a few of them that like it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. So you have that, and then what do you do?
Then I think you should preload it before you're like too far along this process. But generally, you look at what kind of product do you have, and how does that category of product typically the features of the product, how does that translate into how do similar products get in the hands of customers? So typically what you look at is what kind of buyer segment do you have, how much do they pay, how do they buy it? And then you should find a way accordingly to structure your marketing, sales, and customer success activities. Yep. And I think it also has to be very highly aligned to what is a profitable way of getting it into the customer hands. And then we're back to the CAC relative to what the customer is paying. So I think the easiest parameter to start looking at is obviously what do you expect customers to pay for this? Because that tells you something about what is a way that you can get it in the hands of customers in a profitable way.
Yeah. So I see, like, how how I have done it in the past, and I see that a lot of startups don't do that, because many of the startups are, you have technical founders, so I think the general misconception is that, the product is so good that it'll sell itself. So they don't hire a PR agency to do media placements and create awareness of the product. So when you are going to market in this B2B SaaS space, you have to, like, assuming you've created something new, which customers don't know. So hire a PR agency, go to events, get media placements. So, and, if in many cases, you may have to get on the Gartner list and IDC, target these analysts, have them write. So create journal awareness in the segment you're targeting. And, it's tricky because you have to then hire people, to support, let's say, the incoming demand that will be generated from this. And it also depends how you segment the market. Initially, are you targeting just the, small, medium businesses, the deal size is less than X dollars, or you're targeting big customers which have long sales cycle, or, something else? But I would say generally start with small, and the process for small usually is the typical funnel is, and everybody has a different version of that. So if somebody comes to your website, or you meet somewhere, that's a suspect, and then it becomes a prospect, then it becomes a lead, then it's MQL, marketing qualified lead, then it goes to sales, that becomes sales qualified lead, then it becomes an opportunity, then they become customer. So that is the typical, and everybody has different version of this, but that is the general idea, that there's a funnel that you walk people through. Arne, you have like a more structured way of thinking about this in terms of dollar terms on the customers. Can you share that?
Yeah, so in terms of dollar terms, a lot of how you can do marketing in sales, as well as in customer success, is specifically related to the value of the customer per year. So I would say when you're below $1,000 per year per customer in annual contract value, the only likely way of serving that customer is fully automated online. So then the way that I think about it, it's a marketing-led customer acquisition, where the customer comes through the website or some other digital property, and marketing drives the funnel to a conversion point. And typically there's some sort of it could be a freemium thing, but a sign up, and if it's a paid, which it would have to be for at least a segment of the market to be an interesting business, the customers sign up with the credit card, and there's also like online customer support and this sort of thing. So I'd say for like the lowest of low, it's a marketing-led online channel. And so in your process where you have sales, that doesn't necessarily actually involve the salesperson per se.
Yeah, it's a funnel. SQL doesn't necessarily mean that a salesperson is doing it. In many cases it does, but if somebody's just going online and signing up, then you go straight from lead to customer. You bypass that.
Yes.
Yeah.
But oftentimes it takes more than just somebody pops in there and then signs up. Oftentimes there's like maybe people need to study features, and there's all these sorts of things to drive companies from awareness through to conversion even in an online world. So the steps happen, they just tend to happen faster and with smaller friction, and you have to automate the process, so to speak.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So let me share the purchase process that the human psychology goes through, and it always happens with in all sales, even enterprise, and that is, first step is awareness. When people become aware that this new product exists, then the second step is interest. They get interested in it. Yeah, this is something I can use someday, or I want to learn more. They haven't decided if they can use it. They want to learn more in the interested stage. And third is willingness. When they see it, they do learn more, and they say, yeah, this is something I can use someday. And then fourth is intent. That's when they decide, okay, I want it and I will get it by this date. And then the last step is the purchase. So you may see in the B2B SaaS world, you get a lot of free trials. So that is kind of combining interest and willingness together, so people understand the product and get to the intent stage. And then you also see sometimes discounts, and that is people who have the intent, but if you give them a deal, they get pushed to sales. So these are some of the tactics that are used. And a lot of times I've seen mistake people make is their marketing strategy targets directly purchase. They don't walk customers through this whole process. But I think that's changing now.
Yeah.
Anything you want to add to this, this part of go-to-market where you have different ways of getting the customer in?
I think the next bracket, as I think about it, we talked about the online conversion type of go-to-market primarily. As value of customer goes up, typically the level of involvement of people in the loop for sales typically go up. Yep. And I think the biggest difference is in sales. So the next bracket I typically think about is $1,000 per year to $25,000 per year, which from a sales perspective tends to be the area where you can profitably do inside sales.
Mm-hmm. You want to define, Arne, for people who don't know what that means?
Yeah, so it means that the salespeople are inside. They're not on the road to meet meet customers. They typically are on phone, web conferencing, some other means of meeting the customers. And typically, because of the value per customer per sale, it's not like you can't afford to have a salesperson or a set of salespeople, spending hours and hours and days with customers. So typically, the direct engagement from a sales perspective tends to be shorter, say like 30 minutes to some hours per customer. That's like the ideal scenario to convert a customer. So that's the sales angle of it, and I'd say this is more of a sales-led type of go-to-market. But obviously, marketing is still important to give leads. Right? Mm-hmm. So it's still important to find a marketing strategy that generates leads and builds a brand so that customers come to you. But you also have to attune the marketing to find channels that are appropriate for your users and audience. You have to make decisions as to do you do inbound and outbound marketing, or inbound or outbound, or both. Mm-hmm. How do you do that? So ultimately, marketing is still a very important function, even if I view it as a more sales-led, and you have people in the loop to make sure customers become customers.
Yeah. So I think a lot of times you have to create or the best strategy I have found in terms of marketing in this space is you create a new category that you get, more coverage. It's easier to explain to people. And if you create the category, then you are the leader in that category by default. And the newness excites people. But in broad terms, I see they're basically in the B2B SaaS world, there are 4 channels, how you reach the customers. One is I would call, the automatic channel where, or online, where like what you described, they come to you, they sign up, there isn't much human involvement in that. You can automate, they get email updates and leads, etc. But it's basically they on their own decide to sign up. Second is inside sales, where people talk to them, walk them through, answer questions. Third is salespeople, like enterprise sales process, where somebody goes, gives demos, and you negotiate terms, and it's more complex sales. And fourth is partnerships. You partner with, some other company and sell that as a bundle, or they are reselling your product. They have a sales team, but it's basically partnership. So these are the 4 at a broad level ways I've seen. Then it depends who the customers are, how big the sale is, how long the sales cycles are. You choose one or more of these methods. Do you agree at a broad level? It makes sense, Arne?
Yes, I think so. I think some comments along that. I think the bigger and more complex the product is,
Mm-hmm.
the more complex the channel is for marketing, and the more stakeholders you have to deal with. Likewise, when the value per year goes up above the $25,000-$50,000 per year, this would vary a little bit with cost level from country to country, but you typically move to like more the enterprise sales with field sales people who go and meet customers and do deals, and it's more a solution sale oftentimes, as you described. So I would agree with you. I think the sort of the 4th dimension that you mention here, the partner sales or channel sales or whatever you called it, I think is the hardest one to put in a box, and therefore also the one that it kind of works for, or it could work for multiple product categories. Mm-hmm. To be honest, in the current sort of venture world thinking, the channel alternative is less popular. And the reason why it's less popular is that you have less control over that one. Mm-hmm. It's harder to direct. So say you have like either an online conversion or inside sales or field sales organization where it's direct sales approach. Mm-hmm. Assuming your go-to-market model works and you put money on it, you can predict it. The channel sales is hard to predict because there's a third entity involved, at least a third entity that you don't control. And therefore you can't control the efficiency of that channel, and you don't like to be at somebody else's mercy. So it tends to be, particularly in Silicon Valley, a less popular channel these days. But obviously sometimes it works really well, and when it works well at scale, it can actually turn out to be quite an efficient channel.
Yeah, you're right. So that's why it's important. You measure the customer acquisition cost by channel. You measure the churn by channel. You measure the revenue by channel. So you have to have a channel-specific CLV or customer lifetime view, so you can make all these calculations that Arne just outlined.
Yep.
Yeah. And that's another common mistake I have seen. When people look at the CLVs or churn, generally, or I shouldn't say generally, a lot of times they look at it by market segment, not by channel, the distribution channel. So you need both. I'm not saying one is better than the other, but I think you need both.
Yeah.
Okay, so now you have, the people are aware, you have these 4 ways of getting them. There's marketing strategy, how you educate people, push them, trial, promotions. What, a lot of your companies are in this space. Let's first talk about what mistake have you seen that's common in this space in going to market?
A mistake. I don't know what's hard. I think is where people struggle tend to be on finding effective and efficient channels, something attuned to the product and that yields leads or conversions at a good rate and a good cost. I think that tends to be one very clear challenge. Another one tends to be organization of sales and finding people who fit those roles, simply building an effective sales organization. That tends to be a second. And then too late seeing the importance of the customer success work and organizing that sufficiently well before it's too late, so to speak.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I would say I've seen sometimes, in addition to what you said, sometimes the incentives are not designed correctly for the inside sales team and the sales team or the partnership channel. And, in that space, incentive drives a lot of behavior. So you have to test what works. And you don't know. So, like you do A/B testing in marketing, do A/B testing with incentives as well, see what works better. And then you also have to see, inside sales is a lot of times high churn job. So what you can do to keep churn low in that space, keeping people excited.
Absolutely. I think particularly if we look at sort of the middle segment here in my view, where you have like an inside sales model and you have like prospecting and lead generation through the marketing. That's sort of the bread and butter software as a service go to market these days. And there's lots of there's like a school of best practice around that, which has sort of been coming out with a predictable revenue book, and I can't remember what the follow-up Jason Lemkin's book is called, and also being touted by the SaaS community. And it works when it works. And there's sort of a very sort of structured way of doing prospecting, very clear way of setting up sales teams with sales development reps, qualifying leads, and then going to account executives to close and that sort of thing. That structure works really well for a segment of companies, and when they do it well. But even if the methodology and best practices are really well known, finding that talent and retaining it to do these jobs is very hard, just as you say. And the other issue is of course, if you have like a slightly odd product that doesn't like fit the mold, so to speak, you have to be somewhat creative about how you do these things.
Yeah, and you have to spend, money on marketing. A lot of times, I mean, there are many creative ways, but, instead of making, it depends on the stage of the company. If you, let's say, post Series A, you have the money, create a more professional looking video than, just developers doing something on their own, which may work if the product is targeted towards developers to use. But if it's targeted towards, let's say the employees, developers are knowledge workers, let's say non-developer workers in the enterprise, then you have to make it look more, sleek or professional. The other thing I found, which is kind of part of go-to-market, or post go to market, you're in the market and you're always releasing new versions of the product. Create like do user acceptability testing, or UAT, which I see many companies don't do because they're used to just releasing things every 2 weeks. People follow agile methodology, so they are sprints that are 1 to 3 weeks long, and they just keep on releasing stuff. But do UAT before you release it to everybody, and then create something like a customer advisory board that you meet regularly with, get their feedback, what new things they want to see, etc., etc. Yeah,
absolutely. And I think, another point is that I guess in episode 19 last year, we talked about marketing and product for startups. So we shouldn't go into all the nitty gritty details. But I think the go-to-market cannot be seen in isolation from the product. And the closer integrated it is with the product, the better it is. And secondarily, on the marketing, as you grow, some of your channels may become less and less effective as the volume grows. And also, one of the key trends in the world today is that the marketing channels become very, very saturated. So I think there's a constant dynamic fight in tuning your channels and finding new ones and better for how the world works today and how you state of your business. So you can't find a model today and think that's going to play for 5 years going forward without tuning it. It's constant experimentation and improvements and adoptions.
Yep. Yeah. How do you remember the episode number from last season?
I checked it because I knew we had talked of some about these topics.
Wow. So this is, very good news, Arne. You may be box person, but you see the interconnectedness of boxes.
Yeah.
So I just remembered another common mistake that people make is, especially for what I was calling the automatic channel or online channel, you drive a lot of traffic through, Google AdWords or LinkedIn or Facebook, whatever it is. People come to you through something. And for those channels, a lot of times people don't create a separate landing page. So for every search word you have in your list of Google AdWords or Facebook, you gotta create a separate landing page. So I have done that experiment many times. You can't have same landing page for somebody who's coming from, let's say, your product is used by retail industry versus somebody from automotive industry. You have to speak to people in their language. So the value proposition for the product has to be in the words that the market segment you're targeting. So that requires, separate landing page for people to come in. Does it make sense?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. What else do we want to say about go-to-market? Actually, if I would say for the IT related stuff, I know it's painful, but it's worth paying these research people, Gartner, etc., because a lot of especially the ones where the numbers are bigger, meaning it's a salespeople sale and the CIO or CDO or senior level people have to approve it. That's what they look at. They don't want to get fired for getting the wrong vendor. So the being in some magic quadrant from Gartner or some other report gives them more confidence in dealing with you. but you get there. Like you don't start there, you start small and then you get to the bigger guys, because they want to see that you are operational, have a lot of customers, then they feel more comfortable doing business with you.
I'm happy to hear that we're now sponsored by Gartner. So I look forward to receive my half of the check.
I don't like that, that you have to pay, you're a startup, but I've seen how decisions are made. So, okay, the other route is, which has just become popular, and I would say last, less than 10 years, is the freemium model in B2B SaaS sales. It just didn't exist before, because the old model was Microsoft creates stuff and it's not really made for normal people. It's made for IT people, and they're going to train you and you need them to do anything. But the popularity of UX or user experience and this B2B SaaS model or the freemium model, you can give the users product for free, get them excited, get them used to it, and then the enterprise, wakes up, or the IT people, and then they would come and do a deal with you because they want security, SLAs, etc., because everybody's using it. So that, I think, was very clever. Dropbox did that, Slack did that, Zoom did that. Like all these successful companies have followed the same the freemium model in B2B SaaS.
And I would agree with you on that. However, my reservation on freemium would be that for freemium to work, you have to have something that has a very, very large user base. If it's sort of a niche segment, and niche in this context can be quite large actually, the mathematics of the economics don't add up so nicely for freemium. Generally, the conversion to paid version is rather low, and the price points for freemium are generally fairly low, which together just means that you have to start with a very, very large potential user base.
But you may want to get to the large user base, but you start with the small always.
I mean, you always start at zero. That's per default. But if you look at the companies that's been successful with freemium, they're like Dropbox, which is storage. It's like Slack, which is messaging and this sort of thing. These are pretty generic functions that, in theory, can touch a very, very large population of users. If you were to make a deal management system for venture capitalists, there are so few of those that making that a freemium makes it unlikely to be a very successful business.
Yeah, venture capitalists have a lot of money, so they don't need any free stuff. So you can charge them if they want it, they'll pay for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay, so I think we can end here for this specific B2B SaaS go-to-market. We'll hear feedback from you, and then we can do another segment for B2C software, B2C hardware, or B2B2C. So tell us what you think and what you want us to cover. And originally we thought we will just cover the topic of go-to-market, but it's so diverse, and both in terms of depth and breadth, that we thought we restricted to B2B SaaS companies. Yeah?
Absolutely.
So please let us know. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next week.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.